The small apartment on Cherry Street had been empty for 3 days before anyone noticed. Mrs. Chen, the landlord, stood in the doorway staring at the bare walls and empty closets. Just last week, this place had been full of life. There had been baby toys scattered on the floor, dishes in the sink, and the faint smell of lavender air freshener. Now there was nothing, not even a note. She seemed like such a sweet girl, Mrs. Chen muttered to herself, pulling out her phone to call the police. Always paid rent on time, never caused any trouble. And that baby. Such a beautiful little thing. 28-year-old Lisa Martinez had lived in that apartment for almost 2 years. She worked the evening shift at a diner downtown, the kind of place where truckers stopped for coffee and regulars knew everyone's name. Her co-workers remembered her as quiet but friendly, always smiling even when she looked exhausted. She had a 6-month-old daughter named Sophie, with the biggest brown eyes anyone had ever seen. But now Lisa was gone, and so was Sophie. Detective Kelly Morrison arrived at the apartment that afternoon. She was a 15-year veteran of the Portland Police Department, and missing persons cases always hit her the hardest, especially when children were involved. She walked through the empty rooms, her footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor. No signs of struggle, she noted, writing in her notebook. No forced entry. The windows are all locked from the inside. Mrs. Chen hovered in the doorway. She cleared everything out. The furniture was hers, all gone. Even the curtains. It's like she was never here. When did you last see her? 4 days ago. She was coming home from work, carrying Sophie in that baby carrier. I waved at her from my window. She waved back. Looked tired, but she always looked tired. Single mothers, you know. It's not easy. Detective Morrison nodded. She knew that story too well. Did she have family? Friends who visited? Not really. Her parents passed away a few years back, she told me once. No siblings that I knew of. A couple of girls from the diner came by sometimes, but that was it. She kept to herself mostly. Over the next few days, Detective Morrison pieced together what she could. Lisa had withdrawn all her savings from the bank 3 days before she disappeared. It wasn't much, just under $3,000. She'd quit her job at the diner via text message saying she had a family emergency and had to leave town immediately. Her phone was found 2 days later in a dumpster 3 blocks from her apartment, completely destroyed. This doesn't feel like foul play, Detective Morrison told her sergeant. This feels like someone running. Running from what? That's what I need to find out. The security cameras at the Greyhound bus station showed Lisa boarding a bus heading north, Sophie strapped to her chest in a carrier. She had 2 large duffel bags and kept looking over her shoulder, as if expecting someone to stop her. The footage was grainy, but Detective Morrison could see the fear in the young woman's eyes. She's terrified of something, Morrison said, watching the footage for the 3rd time. Meanwhile, across the country in San Francisco, billionaire tech entrepreneur James Bradford had no idea any of this was happening. He was 35 years old, worth close to $4 billion, and constantly surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Money, connections, endorsements, investments. Everyone wanted a piece of James Bradford. His assistant, Patricia, had mentioned something to him the week before. There's a missing persons report that came across my desk. A woman from Portland. The detective working the case found your business card in her apartment. They're wondering if you knew her. James barely looked up from his computer. What's her name? Lisa Martinez. He frowned, the name tugging at something in the back of his mind. I don't think so. I meet hundreds of people every month. Was there anything else? Patricia hesitated. The detective said she had a baby. 6 months old. James's jaw tightened. This wasn't the first time someone had tried to connect him to a child he'd never met. Last year, a woman from Seattle claimed he was the father of her twins. Before that, there was the incident in Miami. Both times the claims had been proven false. People saw a rich man and decided he was their lottery ticket. Send it to legal, he said curtly. They'll handle it. Are you sure? The detective seemed genuine. Patricia, I get 3 or 4 of these a year. They're all looking for money. Legal will deal with it. But Patricia couldn't shake the feeling that this was different. She looked at the photo the detective had sent. Lisa Martinez had kind eyes and a tired smile. She didn't look like the usual people who came after James's fortune. Still, it wasn't her call to make. Back in Portland, Detective Morrison was hitting dead ends. Lisa's co-workers at the diner were shocked by her sudden disappearance. She never said anything about leaving, said Bethany, one of the other waitresses. We weren't super close, but she would have told me if she was planning to move. We had shifts together 3 times a week. Did she ever mention anyone who scared her? Maybe someone bothering her? Bethany thought for a moment. There was this one guy. About a month ago. He came in and sat in her section. She went white as a sheet when she saw him. I had to cover her tables for 10 minutes while she pulled herself together in the back. Did you see what he looked like? Big guy, maybe 45 or 50. Had that private investigator look, you know? Not a cop, but professional. Suit and tie. He didn't order anything, just sat there watching her. When she came back out, he was gone. This was the first real lead Detective Morrison had. Did Lisa say anything about him? Just that he was nobody. But I could tell she was lying. She was shaking for the rest of her shift. Morrison pulled the diner's security footage from that day. The man Bethany described was there, clear as day. He'd sat for exactly 8 minutes watching Lisa work, then left. Morrison ran his face through facial recognition but came up empty. Whoever this guy was, he knew how to stay off the grid. The investigation continued for weeks. Detective Morrison tracked the Greyhound bus to Eugene, but after that, the trail went cold. Lisa had paid cash for everything, stayed off cameras, and vanished into thin air. It was as if she'd studied how to disappear. She's protecting that baby, Morrison told her sergeant. Whatever she's running from, she thinks it's dangerous enough to give up her entire life. Maybe it is, her sergeant replied. James Bradford's business card being in Lisa's apartment nagged at Morrison. She'd sent the information to his legal team, but they'd responded with a form letter basically telling her to back off unless she had evidence of a crime. Rich people had walls around them, and those walls were made of expensive lawyers. Still, something didn't add up. Morrison dug deeper into James's background. He traveled extensively for business, spoke at conferences, invested in startups. About 18 months ago, he'd been in Portland for a tech summit. He'd stayed for 4 days. Morrison pulled up photos from that summit. There was James shaking hands with the mayor, James giving a keynote speech. And in one candid shot, taken at a local restaurant, James sitting in a booth with a young woman. The photo was blurry, taken from across the room, but Morrison's heart skipped a beat. She pulled up Lisa's driver's license photo and compared them. It was her. Lisa Martinez had been photographed with James Bradford 18 months ago, right around the time Sophie would have been conceived. Morrison tried to contact Bradford's office again, but this time with evidence. She sent the photo, the timeline, and a simple message asking for a DNA test. The response came back within hours, not from James, but from his legal team. It was a cease and desist letter. If Morrison continued to harass their client with baseless accusations, they would pursue legal action against her in the Portland Police Department. Morrison sat back in her chair, frustrated. She couldn't force a DNA test without evidence of a crime, and she had none. Lisa had left voluntarily. But the detective's gut told her there was more to this story. A young mother doesn't abandon her entire life without a very good reason. Somewhere out there, Lisa Martinez was hiding with her baby girl, and someone had scared her badly enough to make her run. Morrison just wished she knew who and why, because until she figured that out, Lisa and Sophie would remain shadows, living in fear of something Morrison couldn't even see. The case file sat open on Morrison's desk for months. She couldn't close it, couldn't let it go. Somewhere, a mother and child were in danger, and somehow billionaire James Bradford was connected to it all, whether he knew it or not. A year had passed since Lisa Martinez disappeared from Portland. Now she went by Anna Wilson, a name she'd chosen from a phone book in a random library. She lived in Rockport Bay, a tiny coastal town in Oregon, where tourists came for the summer, and locals knew better than to ask too many questions about newcomers who paid their rent on time. The apartment, above the hardware store, was small but clean. 1 bedroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, and a bathroom with rusty pipes that clanked every time she ran the water. But it was home. More importantly, it was safe. Or at least, that's what Lisa told herself every night before she fell asleep. Sophie was 18 months old now, a chatty little girl with curly dark hair and a smile that could light up a room. She called Lisa Mama and loved to chase the seagulls on the beach. Sometimes, watching her daughter play, Lisa could almost forget why they were there. Almost. She worked at Sweet Bay Bakery, a small shop 3 blocks from their apartment. The owner, Mrs. Ruth Holloway was in her 60s and had owned the bakery for 30 years. She'd hired Lisa without asking too many questions, which Lisa appreciated more than she could say. "You're good with your hands," Ruth had said after Lisa's first week. "These croissants are the best we've had in years." "Where'd you learn to bake like this?" "YouTube videos," Lisa lied. The truth was her grandmother had taught her, back when life was simple and she still had a family. But the less people knew about her real past, the safer they all were. Ruth watched her new employee carefully. The girl was talented, no doubt about that. But there was something haunted in her eyes. She never talked about Sophie's father, never mentioned family or friends, and she always paid for everything in cash, even though it meant making weekly trips to the bank to deposit her paycheck and withdraw what she needed. Lisa had rules now, rules that kept her alive. Never use credit cards, never post on social media, never take photos that might have location data, never stay in one place too long on her days off, always have an escape plan, always keep a bag packed with essentials, just in case they had to run again. The local daycare provider, an older woman named Mrs. Peterson, watched Sophie while Lisa worked. She charged $40 a day, cash only, which worked perfectly for Lisa's situation. Mrs. Peterson ran the daycare out of her home and wasn't licensed, which meant no paperwork, no records, no trail. "Sophie's such a smart little thing," Mrs. Peterson said one morning when Lisa dropped her off. "She's already counting to 5. That's advanced for her age." Lisa smiled, pride mixing with sadness. Sophie deserved better than this. She deserved a real home, friends, family. She deserved a father. But Lisa had tried that route once, and it had nearly destroyed them both. The memories still haunted her late at night. When she'd first realized she was pregnant, she'd been terrified but also cautiously hopeful. The father was James Bradford, the billionaire she'd met during a magical 4-day romance that felt like something out of a movie. He'd been in Portland for a business conference, and she'd served him coffee at the diner. They'd talked, laughed, and spent every free moment together before he flew back to San Francisco. He'd given her his business card. "Call me," he'd said with that charming smile. "I'd like to see you again." But weeks turned into months and Lisa couldn't bring herself to call. What would she say? That a waitress had fallen for a billionaire? It sounded ridiculous even in her own head. Then she found out she was pregnant and suddenly the call became necessary. She'd tried to reach him 3 times. Each time his assistant told her Mr. Bradford was unavailable. Finally, Lisa sent an email explaining the situation. She wasn't asking for money or trying to trap him. She just thought he had a right to know he was going to be a father. The response came 2 weeks later, but not from James. It was from his legal team. The letter was cold and brutal. They accused her of attempted extortion. They threatened legal action if she continued to contact their client. They made it clear that if she pursued paternity claims, they would bury her in legal fees and destroy her reputation. Lisa had been devastated. She'd never wanted his money. She just wanted Sophie to know her father. But the letter made one thing clear. James Bradford wanted nothing to do with her or their baby. So she'd decided to raise Sophie alone. It was hard, working long hours at the diner while pregnant, but she managed. And when Sophie was born, Lisa felt a love so fierce it scared her. This tiny person was everything, and Lisa would protect her no matter what. The trouble started when Sophie was 6 months old. Lisa was walking home from the grocery store when a black car pulled up beside her. A man in an expensive suit got out. He was in his late 40s with cold eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. "Lisa Martinez?" he'd asked. Her blood ran cold. "Who's asking?" "My name's not important. I'm here to give you some advice. Stop trying to contact James Bradford. He's not interested in being a father. And certain people would prefer if this situation just disappeared." "I haven't contacted him in months," Lisa said, her voice shaking. "I don't want anything from him." The man stepped closer. "That's good. Because if you ever tried to claim paternity or ask for support, things could get complicated. Sophie's a beautiful baby. It would be a shame if she ended up in the foster system while you dealt with legal troubles." The threat was clear. Lisa had barely slept that night. And when the same man showed up at the diner a week later, just sitting and watching her work, she knew she had to run. Whoever he wasn't going to leave them alone. And Lisa couldn't risk losing Sophie, so she'd planned her escape carefully. Saved every penny, found a bus route that would take her far from Portland. And one night she'd packed everything that mattered and disappeared. Now a year later, she was still looking over her shoulder. Every black car made her heart race. Every stranger who stared too long made her plan her next escape route. She couldn't live like this forever, but she didn't know how to stop. One afternoon, Sophie spiked a fever at daycare. Mrs. Peterson called Lisa at work, her voice worried. "She's burning up, honey. You need to take her to the doctor." Lisa's hands shook as she untied her apron. "I'll be right there." But at the clinic, reality crashed down on her. They needed insurance information. They needed identification. They needed records. Lisa had been paying cash for Sophie's checkups with a mobile clinic that came to town once a month. No questions asked. But this was different. Sophie's fever was high, and the nurse insisted they go to the emergency room. At the hospital, Lisa had no choice. She handed over her real driver's license, her real name. The admissions clerk typed it into the computer without a second glance, and Lisa felt her carefully constructed world begin to crumble. Sophie had an ear infection. The doctor prescribed antibiotics and sent them home. Simple routine, nothing serious. But Lisa knew what she'd done. She'd entered the system. She'd left a trail. And if someone was looking for her, they'd just made it a whole lot easier. That night, Lisa sat in their small apartment watching Sophie sleep. The little girl's fever was already going down, her cheeks less flushed. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. She had no idea her mother had just made a mistake that could cost them everything. Lisa pulled out the small photo she kept hidden in her wallet. It was the only picture she had of James, a candid shot she'd taken during their time together. He was laughing at something she'd said, his eyes bright with joy. That was before everything went wrong. Before the lawyers and the threats and the fear. She wondered sometimes if he even knew what his people had done. If he'd actually read her email or if his staff had intercepted it. If he knew some man was threatening a woman and child in his name. But it didn't matter anymore. That bridge was burned. What mattered now was keeping Sophie safe. And if that meant running again, Lisa would do it. She'd run to the ends of the earth if she had to. She just hoped she wouldn't have to. Because Sophie deserved a home, a real life. And Lisa was so tired of running. But the hospital visit had changed everything. Somewhere in some database, Lisa Martinez's name was now connected to Rockport Bay, Oregon. And if the wrong person was looking, they'd find her. Lisa packed their emergency bag that night just in case. 2 changes of clothes for Sophie, diapers, formula, her grandmother's ring, and the last of her cash. Everything else could be left behind. She'd done it before. She could do it again. As she zipped the bag closed, Sophie stirred in her sleep. "Mama," she murmured, not quite awake. "I'm here, baby," Lisa whispered. Mama's always here. But even as she said it, Lisa knew the truth. One day, she might not be able to protect Sophie from whatever was coming. And that thought terrified her more than anything else. James Bradford sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor, staring out at the San Francisco skyline. He'd built this empire from nothing, started coding in his parents' garage at 17, sold his first company at 23, and never looked back. Now at 35, he had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, but lately none of it felt like it mattered. His assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Bradford? Robert Walsh is here to see you." "He says it's urgent." James turned from the window. Robert Walsh was his head of security, a former FBI agent who took his job seriously. Too seriously sometimes. If Robert said something was urgent, it usually meant another hacking attempt or a security breach. "Send him in." Robert entered with a thick folder under his arm. His expression was grim, which immediately put James on edge. "What is it? Another data breach?" "No, sir. This is personal." Robert set the folder on the desk. "I've been conducting routine audits of threats against you and the company. Standard procedure. But I found something that doesn't sit right with me." James opened the folder. Inside were documents, photos, and what looked like police reports. "What am I looking at?" About a year ago, a woman named Lisa Martinez disappeared from Portland. She had a 6-month-old baby with her. The detective investigating her disappearance found your business card in her apartment. "Do you remember her?" James frowned, trying to place the name. Portland. A year and a half ago. He'd been there for a tech summit, stayed at the Riverside Hotel, gave a keynote speech. There had been a restaurant, a diner actually, where he'd stopped for coffee one morning, And there had been a woman, pretty with kind eyes and a warm smile. They'd talked. More than talked, actually. They'd spent 4 days together before he flew home. I remember, James said quietly. Lisa, It was brief. I gave her my card, told her to call. She never did. Actually, she did. 3 times. Your assistant at the time noted the calls but didn't put them through. Then Lisa sent an email. Do you remember reading it? James shook his head. I get hundreds of emails a day. I can't read them all. Robert pulled out a printed email. This one was intercepted by your legal team. She was trying to tell you she was pregnant. The words hit James like a physical blow. Pregnant. He grabbed the email and read it. Lisa's words were simple, honest, not asking for anything except for him to know he was going to be a father. Dated 17 months ago. Why didn't anyone tell me about this? His voice was sharp now, anger rising. Your legal team flagged it as a potential extortion attempt. They sent her a cease and desist letter. Standard procedure for people trying to claim paternity and ask for money. But she wasn't asking for money. James read the email again. She just wanted me to know. She wasn't threatening me or demanding anything. Robert nodded. I know, and it gets worse. The junior attorney who handled this is no longer with the firm. He was fired 6 months ago for other issues. But before that, he did something that crossed a line. What did he do? He hired a private investigator named David Klein. Klein was supposed to verify that Lisa wasn't a threat. Instead, he threatened her. Told her to stay away from you or she'd lose custody of her baby. That's why she ran. James felt sick. Where's Klein now? Arrested 3 weeks ago on unrelated charges. Blackmail, harassment, illegal surveillance. He's facing serious prison time. During his interrogation, he mentioned the Lisa Martinez case trying to reduce his sentence. That's how this all came to light. And Lisa? Where is she? Robert pulled out more documents. That's the thing. She disappeared completely. Changed her name, paid cash for everything, stayed off the grid. But 2 weeks ago, she took her daughter to a hospital in Rockport Bay. She had to use her real ID. That's how I found her. James stared at the address. Rockport Bay was a tiny town on the Oregon coast, the kind of place people went to disappear. She's been living in hiding for a year because some guy I never met threatened her in my name. Yes, sir. The reality of it crashed over James. Somewhere in Oregon, he had a daughter. A child he'd never met, never held, never even known existed. And her mother had been terrorized by someone claiming to work for him, all because his staff had been too paranoid, too protective, too ready to assume the worst. I need to see them, James said. I thought you might say that. But Mr. Bradford, you need to be careful. Lisa Martinez has been living in fear for a year. If you show up unannounced, she might run again. And next time we might not find her. James knew Robert was right, but every instinct in his body screamed to get on a plane right now. What do you suggest? Let me do surveillance first. Figure out her routine, her situation. Make sure she's safe. Then we'll plan an approach that won't scare her off. It went against everything James wanted, but he agreed. 3 days later, he couldn't wait anymore. I'm going to Rockport Bay, he told Robert. You can come with me or not, but I'm going. Robert sighed. I'll make the arrangements. They drove to Rockport Bay in an unmarked car. No driver, no security detail, just the two of them. James wore jeans and a baseball cap, trying to blend in. The town was exactly as he'd imagined. Small, quiet, with more seagulls than people. Robert had done his homework. She works at Sweet Bay Bakery. Morning shift, 6 to 2. Her daughter stays with a woman named Mrs. Peterson during those hours. At 3 o'clock, James sat in a coffee shop across from Mrs. Peterson's house. His heart was pounding. And then he saw her. Lisa walking up the street with a stroller. She looked different from his memories. Thinner, more tired, older somehow, even though only 18 months had passed. But it was definitely her. She knocked on the door and moments later came back out carrying a little girl. James's breath caught. The child had dark curly hair and was wearing a yellow dress. She was chattering away, pointing at birds, and Lisa was smiling at her with such love it made his chest ache. That was his daughter. Sophie. The name had been in the police report. Sophie Martinez. She was real, not just words in a file. A living, breathing little person who existed because of a few days he and Lisa had shared. He watched as Lisa buckled Sophie into a car seat. An old car, probably held together with duct tape and prayers. They drove off and James followed at a distance. They went to a small apartment above a hardware store. Lisa carried Sophie up the stairs, struggling with a bag of groceries at the same time. James's hands gripped the steering wheel. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. Lisa should never have been in this situation. She should never have been scared, never had to run, never had to raise their daughter in poverty while he sat in his mansion wondering why his billions didn't make him happy. "I need to talk to her," James said. "Not yet," Robert warned. "You need a plan. You can't just walk up and expect her to trust you." But James was done waiting. The next morning, he walked into Sweet Bay Bakery at 7 a.m. The place smelled like fresh bread and coffee. There were only 2 other customers, both elderly men reading newspapers, and there was Lisa behind the counter, arranging croissants in the display case. She looked up when the bell over the door chimed. Their eyes met. The color drained from her face. The croissant in her hand dropped to the floor. For a moment, neither of them moved. James could see panic rising in her eyes, her body tensing like she was about to run. "Lisa," he said softly, "please, I just want to talk." She glanced at the back door, calculating her escape route. Her hands were shaking. "I know about Klein," James continued. "I know what he did to you. I never sent him. I never knew about any of it. Please just give me 5 minutes to explain." The older woman, Ruth, came out from the back. "Anna, you okay?" Anna, of course she'd changed her name. James's heart broke a little more. "I'm fine, Ruth," Lisa said, her voice barely steady. She looked at James. "After my shift. 3 o'clock. The beach behind the pier. You get 5 minutes." James nodded. "Thank you." He left the bakery and spent the next 8 hours in agony, playing over what he'd say. How do you apologize for something you didn't do but were responsible for? How do you tell a woman you want to be a father when you'd missed the first 18 months of your child's life? At 3 o'clock, James walked to the beach. Lisa was already there, sitting on a driftwood log, staring out at the ocean. She didn't look at him as he approached. 5 minutes, she said. James sat down, keeping distance between them. "I never got your calls. I never read your email. My staff intercepted everything. Decided you were trying to extort me and handled it without my knowledge. I didn't know I had a daughter until 3 days ago." "So you said," Lisa replied, her voice cold. "That's supposed to make it better?" "No, nothing makes it better. But I need you to know I didn't send Klein. I didn't authorize those threats. The lawyer who hired him was fired months ago for other ethical violations. And Klein is in jail now, facing serious charges." Lisa finally looked at him. Her eyes were hard. "And what do you want from me, James? You want to swoop in now, play hero? Take Sophie away from me? God, no." "Lisa, I want to help. I want to be a father to Sophie. But only if you'll let me. On your terms," she laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My terms? That's rich. You have $4 billion and an army of lawyers. What are my terms worth?" "Everything," James said. "Because you're her mother. You've protected her, raised her, loved her. I've done nothing. I want to change that, but I won't force anything. I just want a chance." Lisa stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. "I can't trust you. Every time I trusted someone with power, they destroyed me. I know, and I know I have to earn your trust. But Lisa, look at me." He stood too, facing her. "I came here alone. No lawyers, no security team, no threats. Just me, asking for a chance to know my daughter. And if I say no, then I'll set up a trust fund in Sophie's name that she can access when she's 18. I'll make sure you both have financial security. And I'll walk away." Lisa searched his face, looking for the lie, the trick, but all she saw was sincerity and regret. And exhaustion. He looked as tired as she felt. "Why should I believe you?" "Because I'm standing here and you haven't run yet," James said softly. "That's more than I deserve. And because I can prove Klein and the lawyer acted without my knowledge. I have documentation, everything. You can take it to the police, to a judge, whatever you need to feel safe." Lisa was quiet for a long time, watching the waves crash against the shore. Sophie was safe with Ruth right now. Lisa had an hour before she needed to pick her up. An hour to make a decision that would change everything. "If I agree to this," she finally said, "we do it slowly. You don't just get to be dad overnight. Sophie doesn't even know you exist." "I understand. And I need protection. Real protection. Not just promises. Klein might be in jail, but who's to say there aren't others? I'll handle it. Restraining orders, security, whatever you need." Lisa turned to him. And I want to go back to school. I had a year left before I had to drop out. I want to finish my degree. Done. I'll pay for everything. I'm not your charity case, James. You're Sophie's mother, and you deserve better than what my people put you through. He paused. I'm sorry, Lisa. For all of it. I should have called you back. I should have checked on those emails myself. I should have done 100 things differently. The apology hung in the air between them. Lisa wanted to stay angry, wanted to protect herself and Sophie from more disappointment. But she was so tired. Tired of running, tired of being afraid, tired of raising Sophie alone. One meeting, she said finally. You, me, and Sophie. 1 hour at the park tomorrow. If she likes you, we'll talk about next steps. If not, you set up that trust fund and we're done. James felt hope for the first time in days. Thank you. Lisa walked away without another word, her heart pounding. She just agreed to let James Bradford into their lives. Either this was the biggest mistake she'd ever made, or the beginning of something Sophie deserved. Time would tell which one it was. The playground was nearly empty when Lisa arrived with Sophie. Just one other mother with twins on the swings far enough away to give them privacy. Lisa had barely slept the night before, second-guessing her decision 100 times. What if James changed his mind? What if he tried to take Sophie away? What if this was all some elaborate scheme? But when she saw him sitting on a bench near the sandbox wearing jeans and an old college sweatshirt, looking as nervous as she felt, some of her anxiety eased. He stood when he saw them, his hands shoved in his pockets like he didn't know what to do with them. Hi, he said softly. Hi. Lisa set Sophie down. The little girl immediately toddled toward the sandbox, pointing at the bright toys someone had left there. Sophie, honey, come meet someone. Sophie turned, her dark eyes curious. James crouched down to her level, and Lisa saw his breath catch. Up close, there was no denying the resemblance. Sophie had his eyes, his chin, even the way her mouth curved when she smiled. Hi, Sophie, James said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm James. Sophie stared at him for a moment, then held up the toy shovel she'd grabbed. Dig? James laughed, and it sounded almost like a sob. Yeah, we can dig. Is that okay? He looked up at Lisa for permission. She nodded, her own throat tight with unexpected emotion. This was real. Sophie's father was meeting her for the first time, and Sophie had no idea how important this moment was. James sat in the sand, and Sophie immediately plopped down next to him, showing him how to scoop sand into the bucket. He followed her lead, listening seriously as she explained in her limited vocabulary how sandcastles worked. Lisa sat on the bench watching them, her emotions a complicated tangle. After 20 minutes, Sophie warmed up completely. She was showing James her favorite slide, demanding he push her on the swings, bringing him flowers she'd picked from the grass. James soaked in every second, his eyes bright with joy and occasionally glistening with tears he tried to hide. When Sophie ran off to chase a butterfly, James came back to the bench. She's incredible, he said. Lisa, she's just perfect. She is, Lisa agreed. And she deserves better than what I can give her on a baker's salary. Then let me help, please. Lisa was quiet for a moment, watching Sophie dance around trying to catch the butterfly. If we do this, I need to know you're serious. I can't let her get attached to you if you're going to disappear when it gets hard. Being a parent isn't always fun. It's 3 a.m. fevers and tantrums in grocery stores and exhaustion so deep you forget your own name. I know, James said. Or at least I know I don't know. But I want to learn. I want to be there for both of you. Not both of us, Lisa corrected. Sophie, you're here for Sophie. James looked at her. Right, of course. But something in his eyes said there was more to it than that. Lisa pushed the thought away. This wasn't about old feelings or might-have-beens. This was about Sophie getting to know her father. Over the next few weeks, James became a regular presence in their lives. He came to Rockport Bay 3 times a week, spending mornings with Sophie while Lisa worked or studied. He'd enrolled her in the community college online program like he'd promised, paying for her classes without making a big deal out of it. Lisa had been skeptical at first, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But James was patient and consistent. He showed up when he said he would. He learned how to change diapers, read picture books with silly voices, and navigate Sophie's complicated preferences about which cup to use for which drink. Why does it matter if her milk is in the blue cup or the pink cup? He asked Lisa one afternoon, genuinely baffled. Lisa laughed. It just does. That's toddler logic. You learn to pick your battles. James was also learning about Lisa. Not the scared woman who'd run away, but the person she'd been before all this. She was funny, whip-smart, and had strong opinions about everything from politics to the best way to make pie crust. She'd been 2 semesters away from a business degree when her parents died, and she'd had to drop out to work full-time. I wanted to open my own bakery, she admitted one evening. Sophie was asleep, and they were sitting on Lisa's tiny porch drinking coffee. Nothing huge, just a small place. But life had other plans. You could still do it, James said. After you finish school. Maybe. But Lisa's voice said she didn't really believe it. James had also made good on his promises about protection. His lawyers had obtained restraining orders against Klein and the former attorney. Robert Walsh had quietly vetted everyone in Lisa's life in Rockport Bay, making sure no one suspicious was watching her. Lisa even had a panic button app on her new phone that would alert James's security team if she ever felt threatened. Slowly, Lisa began to relax. The constant tension in her shoulders eased. She started sleeping better. Sophie was thriving with James in her life, calling him James in her toddler way, which made him smile every time. But the real turning point came 2 months after that first meeting. Sophie got sick, not seriously, just a bad cold, but she was miserable. Lisa had an important exam she couldn't miss, and Mrs. Peterson's daycare was closed for repairs. I'll stay with her, James offered immediately. You have a company to run, Lisa said. I'll figure something out. Lisa, I can work from anywhere. Let me do this, please. So Lisa left Sophie with her father for the first time. She was a nervous wreck through the entire exam, checking her phone every 5 minutes even though it was on silent. When she got home 3 hours later, she found James on the couch with Sophie asleep on his chest. The TV was playing cartoons on mute, and there were tissues everywhere. James looked exhausted but happy. She finally crashed about 20 minutes ago. We read the same book 11 times. I didn't know that was possible. Lisa felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just a man fulfilling an obligation. This was a father loving his daughter. Thank you, she said quietly. You don't have to thank me. This is what parents do. That night, after James left and Sophie was settled in her crib, Lisa sat at her small kitchen table and cried, not from sadness but from relief. For the first time in over a year, she wasn't alone. Sophie had a father who loved her. And maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. James was having his own revelations. Being a father was harder than running a billion-dollar company, but it was also more rewarding than anything he'd ever done. Every time Sophie laughed, every time she reached for him, every time she called his name, his heart felt too big for his chest. He'd also fallen for Lisa all over again, though he knew better than to say anything. She'd been clear about boundaries. This was about Sophie, not them. But watching Lisa study at night, determination in her eyes as she worked toward her degree, or seeing her bake at the cafe, her hands moving with practiced ease, or listening to her sing Sophie to sleep with a voice that cracked on the high notes, James knew he was in trouble. You've got it bad, Robert said one afternoon, shaking his head. Is it that obvious? Only to everyone with eyes. Does she know? No, and she's not going to. I screwed up once by not being there. I won't screw up again by pushing for something she's not ready for. But the universe had other plans. 3 months after James came into their lives, Lisa's landlord sold the building. The new owner wanted to renovate and turn the apartments into vacation rentals. Lisa had 60 days to find a new place. Rockport Bay was small, and affordable housing was almost non-existent. Lisa spent every free moment searching, but everything was either too expensive or too far from her job and school. Move to San Francisco, James said when she told him. I have a property, a townhouse near the waterfront. 3 bedrooms, completely furnished. It's just sitting empty. James, I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's practical. You need a place to live, I have one. Plus I could see Sophie more often. Help with daycare. Give you more time to study. It makes sense. Lisa wanted to argue, but she was backed into a corner. I'll pay rent. Absolutely not. James. Lisa. He met her eyes. You've been doing this alone for almost 2 years. Let me help, please. Not because you can't handle it, but because you shouldn't have to. It was the please that got her. They moved to San Francisco 2 weeks later. The townhouse was beautiful. way nicer than anywhere Lisa had ever lived. Sophie had her own room, painted a soft yellow with clouds on the ceiling. There was a backyard with a swing set James had installed the day before they arrived. "This is too much," Lisa said, looking around the kitchen that was bigger than her entire apartment in Rockport Bay. "It's not enough," James replied, "but it's a start." Ruth had cried when they left, making Lisa promise to send photos and visit. Mrs. Peterson had hugged Sophie for a full 5 minutes, but Lisa knew this was the right choice. Sophie deserved stability, and San Francisco offered opportunities Rockport Bay never could. James visited every day now, sometimes twice a day. He'd show up for breakfast before heading to his office, then come back for dinner. He taught Sophie to ride her tricycle in the backyard. He attended her first day at a real daycare, taking more pictures than Lisa did. And slowly, the walls Lisa had built around her heart started to crumble. She tried to fight it. This arrangement was about Sophie, she reminded herself constantly. But it was hard to maintain that stance when James brought her coffee every morning exactly how she liked it. When he fixed the leaky faucet she'd mentioned once in passing. When he asked about her classes and actually listened to her answers. One evening, James stayed late helping Sophie with a puzzle. Lisa was studying at the kitchen table, and Sophie was getting frustrated with a piece that wouldn't fit. "Try turning it around," James suggested gently. "Sometimes things fit better when you look at them from a different angle." Sophie rotated the piece and it clicked into place. She squealed with delight and James grinned at her. Then he looked at Lisa and something in his expression made her heart skip. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. Just, this is nice, being here with you both. It feels like family." Lisa closed her textbook. "James, we need to talk." His face fell. "That's never good. No, not like that." She took a breath. "I need to know what we're doing here. Because Sophie's getting attached to you. I'm getting—" She stopped, not ready to admit what she was getting. "What are you getting, Lisa?" "Comfortable. And that scares me. Because if this doesn't work out, if you decide being a father is too hard or too complicated, it won't just be Sophie who gets hurt." James moved to sit across from her at the table. Sophie was happily working on her puzzle, ignoring them. "I'm not going anywhere," he said quietly. "I know I haven't been around for most of Sophie's life, and I know that's my fault, even if I didn't know about her. But I'm here now and I'm staying. Whatever that looks like, however you'll let me be part of your lives, I'm in. Even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard." He reached across the table, stopping just short of taking her hand. "I'm not going to pretend I know what I'm doing. I'm learning as I go. But Lisa, I've never been more sure of anything than I am about wanting to be Sophie's father, and wanting to be here for you too." Lisa felt tears prick her eyes. "This isn't how I imagined my life going. Mine either. But maybe that's okay. Maybe it's better than what we imagined." That night after James left and Sophie was asleep, Lisa stood in the doorway of her daughter's room, watching her sleep. They'd come so far from that scared woman who ran in the middle of the night. They were safe now. They had a home, security, and most importantly, they had someone who cared about them. Lisa pulled out her phone and sent James a text. "Same time tomorrow?" His response came immediately. "I'll bring breakfast," Lisa smiled. This wasn't perfect. There were still complicated conversations to have, boundaries to negotiate, and a whole future to figure out. But for the first time since she'd seen those 2 lines on a pregnancy test, Lisa felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to work out after all. 3 months had passed since Lisa and Sophie moved to San Francisco. The townhouse no longer felt like James's property they were borrowing. It felt like home. Sophie's artwork covered the refrigerator. Lisa's textbooks were spread across the dining room table. The kitchen smelled like whatever new recipe Lisa was testing for her baking class, and James was there almost every day. Not as a visitor anymore, but as part of the family. He knew where they kept the Band-Aids, which bedtime stories Sophie liked best, and how Lisa took her coffee at different times of day. Morning was black with 1 sugar. Afternoon was with cream. Evening, if she was studying late, was whatever would keep her awake. Lisa had finished her fall semester with straight A's. James had shown up to her last final with flowers, which made her laugh and cry at the same time. No one had ever celebrated her achievements like this before. Sophie had been there too, holding a sign James helped her make that said, "Mommy's smart," in crooked letters. But the real change was happening between Lisa and James. The careful distance they'd maintained was slowly dissolving. They'd started having dinner together most nights, the three of them sitting around the table like a real family. James would tell them about his day, and Sophie would babble about her adventures at daycare, and Lisa would share stories from her classes. One evening, Sophie fell asleep on the couch between them during a movie. James went to carry her to bed, and when he came back, Lisa was still sitting there, her head tilted back against the cushions. "Tired?" he asked. "Exhausted," she admitted, "but in a good way. I have a paper due tomorrow, but I think I'm actually going to finish it on time for once." James sat back down, leaving the space where Sophie had been between them. "You're doing amazing, you know. Schoolwork, being a mom. I don't know how you manage it all." "I have help now," Lisa said, turning to look at him. "That makes all the difference." Their eyes met, and something shifted in the air between them. James wanted to reach for her hand but didn't quite dare. "Lisa, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "What happened between us back in Portland? Before everything went wrong? Was that real for you? Or was I just some guy passing through?" Lisa was quiet for a moment. "It was real," she finally said. "Maybe too real. That's why it hurt so much when I thought you didn't want anything to do with us." "I should have called you," James said. "The day after I left Portland, I should have called. I kept thinking about you, about those 4 days, but I told myself it was just a fling, that you probably didn't want to hear from some rich guy who'd be gone again in a week. I thought the same thing, that I was just another forgettable person you met on the road. You weren't. You aren't." James shifted closer, closing the gap between them. "Lisa, I need you to know something. I'm not here just for Sophie. I mean, I am. She's my daughter and I love her more than anything. But I'm also here for you. I want to be here for you." Lisa's heart was pounding. "James, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Because I'm falling for you, Lisa. Maybe I already fell back in Portland, and being here with you and Sophie every day, it's just making me realize what I almost lost." Lisa reached for his hand, finally bridging the distance. "I'm scared. The last time I let myself care about you, I ended up alone and terrified. I know, and I can't promise everything will be perfect, but I can promise I'm not going anywhere, and whatever happens between us, Sophie comes first, always." "Always," Lisa agreed. Then before she could talk herself out of it, she leaned in and kissed him. It was soft and tentative, nothing like their first kiss in Portland when everything was new and exciting. This kiss was different. It carried the weight of everything they'd been through, the pain and the fear and the hope. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "So," James said, his voice a bit unsteady, "what does this mean?" "I don't know yet," Lisa admitted. "But I think I'd like to find out slowly. Can we do this slowly?" "As slow as you need." But the universe seemed to have other plans about their pace. The next week, James's mother called. Catherine Bradford was 70 years old, sharp as a tack, and used to getting what she wanted. "When do I get to meet my granddaughter?" she demanded. James had been putting off this conversation. His parents lived in Seattle, and he hadn't told them about Sophie until a month ago. His father had been shocked but supportive. His mother had been thrilled and immediately started planning. "Mom, it's complicated." "It's not complicated. I have a granddaughter I've never met. You bring her to Seattle, or I'm coming to San Francisco. Your choice." James looked at Lisa, who'd overheard enough of the conversation to be nervous. "Let me talk to Lisa," he told his mother. "I'll call you back." "Your mother wants to meet Sophie?" Lisa asked when he hung up. "Very much. And probably you too." "She's not exactly subtle about these things." Lisa bit her lip. Meeting James's parents felt like a huge step, one she wasn't sure she was ready for. But Sophie deserved to know her grandparents. Lisa had lost her own parents too young. She wouldn't take that opportunity away from her daughter. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." 2 weeks later, they flew to Seattle. James's parents had a beautiful home overlooking Puget Sound. Catherine Bradford opened the door before they could even knock, her eyes immediately finding Sophie. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh, she's perfect." Sophie, who usually took time to warm up to strangers, surprised everyone by reaching for her grandmother immediately. Catherine scooped her up, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, sweetheart. I'm your Grandma Catherine. I've been waiting so long to meet you." James's father, William, was more reserved but equally moved. He shook Lisa's hand warmly.